The year is 793 AD. Before the sun rises, the monks of Lindisfarne hear distant rumble over the North Sea. At first they think it's thunder, but the sound grows sharper, faster. Through the mist, long ships emerge, sleek and menacing, their dragon-headed prows cutting through the waves. These are not storms sent by the gods, they are Vikings. But this is no simple tale of blood and plunder. Over the next 3 centuries, these fierce raiders will become kings, lawmakers, and empire builders, reshaping the map of Europe. From feared invaders to sophisticated rulers, their transformation is one of the greatest in medieval history. This is the Viking Chronicles.
The year is 793 AD. Picture this. Monks at Lindisfarne Monastery wait to what they think is thunder rolling across the North Sea. But as the sound grows closer, they realize with horror that it's not a storm approaching their peaceful shores. It's something far more terrifying. Dozens of long ships slice through the morning mist, their dragon heads carved into the prows seeming to breathe fire in the dawn light. Vikings have arrived, and history will never be the same. What happens next will shock you. These aren't just mindless barbarians thirsting for blood and gold. Over the next 3 centuries, these same warriors will transform from coastal raiders into sophisticated rulers who reshape entire continents. They'll establish kingdoms, create trade networks spanning continents, and leave a legacy that still influences our world today. This is the untold story of the greatest transformation in medieval history. Welcome to the Viking Chronicles, where we're diving deep into one of history's most incredible metamorphoses. Today we're uncovering how a collection of Scandinavian tribes evolved from feared sea raiders into powerful monarchs who ruled from Iceland to Ukraine. Trust me, by the end of this journey, you'll see Vikings in a completely different light. But first, let's shatter some myths. When most people hear Viking, they picture horned helmets and savage berserkers. Here's the truth that will surprise you. Vikings never wore horned helmets into battle. That's pure Hollywood fiction. Real Viking helmets were practical, often simple iron caps designed for protection, not intimidation. The horned helmet myth comes from 19th century Romantic art and Richard Wagner's operas. The word Viking itself doesn't even mean what you think. It's not a race or nationality. Viking comes from the Old Norse word vikingur, meaning to go raiding or pirate. It was a job description, not an identity. These were Scandinavians who chose the raiding lifestyle, while many of their countrymen were peaceful farmers, craftsmen, and traders. Now, let's journey back to where it all began. Scandinavia in the 8th century was a harsh but beautiful land of fjords, forests, and endless winters. Climate change, yes, climate change, played a crucial role in Viking expansion. A warming period called the medieval warm period made sea travel easier and opened new lands for settlement. Meanwhile, political pressure and limited farmland in Scandinavia pushed younger sons and ambitious warriors to seek their fortunes elsewhere. The Vikings possessed something that gave them an enormous advantage: superior shipbuilding technology. Their long ships were masterpieces of engineering that seem almost futuristic for their time. These vessels could sail in just 3 feet of water, allowing Vikings to navigate rivers deep into enemy territory where larger ships couldn't follow. They could be carried overland when necessary and launched quickly for surprise attacks or rapid retreats. The first recorded Viking raid at Lindisfarne wasn't random violence. It was a carefully calculated strike. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle describes the attack with genuine terror. In this year, fierce, foreboding omens came over the land of the Northumbrians. There were excessive whirlwinds, lightning, and fiery dragons were seen flying in the sky. The monks saw the raid as divine punishment, but Vikings saw it as brilliant strategy. Monasteries were wealthy, lightly defended, and usually located near water for easy escape. This successful raid opened the floodgates. Viking longships began appearing along coastlines from Ireland to the Mediterranean. But here's where the story gets fascinating. These weren't random acts of violence. Viking raids followed sophisticated patterns based on seasonal winds, political intelligence, and economic opportunities. They had detailed knowledge of local politics, knew when rulers were distracted by wars, and understood which targets offered the best return on investment. The transformation from raider to ruler didn't happen overnight, and it wasn't uniform across all Viking groups. Let's follow 3 different paths that illustrate this evolution. First, the Norwegian Vikings who headed west to the British Isles. Initially, they came for quick raids, but some realized that controlling territory was more profitable than just plundering it. Why raid a monastery once when you could tax it annually? In Ireland, Vikings established Dublin as a trading post around 841 AD. What started as a winter camp for raiders evolved into a permanent settlement, then a thriving commercial center. Within decades, Dublin became one of Europe's most important trading hubs, dealing in everything from Irish wool to forced laborers captured in raids. The Vikings hadn't just conquered territory, they'd created wealth. The Danish Vikings took a different approach in England. Rather than establishing isolated trading posts, they launched what historians call the Great Heathen Army in 865 AD. This wasn't a raiding party, it was a full-scale invasion force led by legendary figures like Ivar the Boneless and his brothers. Their goal wasn't treasure but kingdoms. The transformation accelerated when Viking leaders realized that ruling required different skills than raiding. Successful Viking rulers had to master diplomacy, taxation, lawmaking, and alliance building. Take Canute the Great, who ruled England, Denmark, and Norway in the early 11th century. He wasn't just a successful warrior, he was a sophisticated politician who issued laws, minted coins, and patronized the Christian church despite his pagan heritage. But perhaps nowhere is the Viking transformation more dramatic than in the East, where Swedish Vikings called the Rus ventured down Russian rivers. These weren't coastal raiders but river explorers who established a trade route from Scandinavia to Constantinople. The Rus didn't just raid, they became the founding dynasty of Russia itself. The very name Russia comes from these Swedish Vikings. The story of how Vikings adapted to local conditions is remarkable. In England, they adopted Anglo-Saxon legal traditions while maintaining their own cultural identity. In Ireland, they integrated with Gaelic society through marriage and alliance. In France, they became the Normans, adopting French language and customs so thoroughly that within 2 generations they were indistinguishable from other French nobles. Religion played a crucial role in this transformation. Early Viking raiders were pagans attacking Christian targets, creating a narrative of religious conflict. But Viking leaders quickly understood that religious conversion could be politically advantageous. Converting to Christianity opened doors to marriage alliances, trade partnerships, and diplomatic recognition from established European powers. The conversion wasn't always genuine, and it wasn't always complete. Many Viking rulers practiced what historians call hedge betting, publicly converting to Christianity while privately maintaining pagan traditions. Archaeological evidence shows Christian symbols and pagan artifacts buried together in Viking graves, suggesting a complex religious transition that lasted generations. Trade became the engine of Viking transformation. What started as raid-based wealth evolved into sophisticated commercial networks. Vikings became middlemen in a trade system stretching from Greenland to Constantinople. They traded amber, furs, and forced laborers from the north for silver, silk, and spices from the east. Archaeological digs in Scandinavia have uncovered coins from as far away as Central Asia.
From the icy fjords of Scandinavia to sunlit markets of Constantinople, the Vikings have transformed from shadowy raiders into masters of trade. Their longships no longer carry just warriors, they carry silver, silk, and spices from across the known world. But this is only half the story, because as the silver piled high and their influence spread, the Vikings faced a new challenge: how to turn power seized by the sword into power kept by the crown. The age of the raider was ending, and the age of the ruler was about to begin.
The establishment of permanent settlements marked a crucial turning point. When Vikings began bringing their families and building towns, they stopped being temporary raiders and became permanent residents, with stakes in local stability. These settlements required infrastructure, laws, and governance structures that transformed Vikings from warriors into administrators. Consider the case of Iceland, where Norwegian Vikings established one of medieval Europe's most sophisticated political systems. The Icelandic Althing, established around 930 AD, was a parliamentary assembly that created laws, settled disputes, and governed the island without a king. This wasn't the work of savage barbarians, it was sophisticated political innovation. The legal traditions Vikings established show remarkable sophistication. They created detailed law codes covering everything from property rights to personal injury compensation. The concept of trial by jury, fundamental to modern legal systems, has Viking origins. They understood that long-term success required predictable legal frameworks that protected both Vikings and the people they ruled. Women played more significant roles in Viking society than in most medieval cultures, and this continued as Vikings transitioned to rulers. Viking women could own property, request divorces, and even serve as warriors in some contexts. When Vikings established kingdoms, they often maintained these relatively progressive gender roles, influencing the broader culture of their new territories. The military evolution of Vikings parallels their political transformation. Early Viking warfare emphasized mobility, surprise attacks, and quick retreats. As Vikings became rulers, they had to develop defensive strategies and siege warfare techniques. They learned to build castles, maintain standing armies, and conduct complex military campaigns involving thousands of soldiers. Technology transfer was another crucial aspect of Viking transformation. As they settled in new territories, Vikings didn't just impose their own methods. They learned and adapted local techniques. In England, they adopted improved farming methods. In France, they learned advanced metallurgy. In Russia, they mastered river navigation techniques that opened entirely new trade routes. The linguistic legacy of Viking rulers is still visible today. English contains hundreds of words with Viking origins, including basic terms like sky, knife, husband, and they. Place names across Britain and Ireland reveal the extent of Viking settlement, with suffixes like by, thorp, and wick marking former Viking territories. Art and culture evolved alongside political transformation. Early Viking art emphasized portable objects like jewelry and weapons, perfect for a mobile raiding lifestyle. As Vikings became rulers, they began commissioning churches, palaces, and monuments that demonstrated their permanence and sophistication. The intricate stone carvings and illuminated manuscripts produced in Viking kingdoms rival anything created elsewhere in medieval Europe. The economic impact of Viking transformation extended far beyond their territories. By establishing stable trade routes and commercial centers, Viking rulers contributed to the economic revival of medieval Europe. Cities like York, Dublin, and Kiev became major commercial hubs that continued thriving long after Viking political power declined. Perhaps most remarkably, the descendants of Viking rulers became some of medieval Europe's most influential dynasties. The Norman conquest of England in 1066 was led by William the Conqueror, whose great-great-great-grandfather was Rollo, a Viking chieftain who became the first Duke of Normandy. The Rurik dynasty, founded by Swedish Vikings, ruled Russia for over 700 years. The Viking transformation challenges our assumptions about historical change. It shows how quickly and completely a culture can evolve when circumstances demand adaptation. Within just a few generations, descendants of pagan raiders were building cathedrals, establishing universities, and creating legal systems that influenced the development of modern democracy. But why did this transformation succeed where others failed? The answer lies in Viking pragmatism and adaptability. Unlike some conquerors who tried to impose their culture completely on subject peoples, Vikings were remarkably flexible. They adopted what worked locally while maintaining their core strengths in seamanship, warfare, and trade. The legacy of this transformation extends far beyond the medieval period. The entrepreneurial spirit, adaptability, and global perspective that characterized Viking rulers contributed to the later development of Scandinavian societies. Modern Nordic countries' emphasis on exploration, trade, and democratic governance has roots in their Viking past. As we reach the end of our journey through the Viking Chronicles, we see that the transformation from raiders to rulers wasn't just a change in tactics, it was a fundamental evolution in human civilization. These Scandinavian seafarers demonstrated that with adaptability, intelligence, and determination, any society can reinvent itself and leave a lasting mark on history. The next time you hear the word Viking, remember, you're not just thinking about raiders and longships, you're thinking about one of history's most successful examples of cultural transformation, political innovation, and adaptive leadership. From the fjords of Norway to the steppes of Russia, from the islands of Scotland to the shores of North America, the Viking legacy lives on in our laws, our languages, and our understanding of what's possible when courage meets opportunity.
From the smoke of burning monasteries to the marble halls of royal courts, the Viking journey was more than a conquest. It was transformation. In just a few generations, the same hands that gripped bloodied axes were drafting laws, forging alliances, and shaping the future of nations. Their legacy still whispers in our languages, our laws, and the very maps of Europe. The Viking story is proof that no culture is bound by its beginnings. It can sail towards something greater. So the next time you hear the word Viking, remember, this isn't just history, this is the saga of how raiders became rulers and how courage, cunning, and change can rewrite the world.